if I'm going to have to rely on a realtor, I may not make it, right? So that's when I started saying, hey, let me figure out ways to get leads on my own. And then once I started getting the lead on my own, now I started to figure out the leverage position. That's what I didn't know.
Welcome to The Growth Mindset, the podcast for ambitious real estate and mortgage professionals. Hosted by Adam Crosley and Rick Riddle, this show dives into entrepreneurial strategies, sales techniques, and mindset hacks designed to fuel your career growth. Get ready to learn from top producers, gain actionable insights, and start your journey towards success. Here's your hosts, Adam and Rick.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And welcome to this week's episode of the Growth Mindset Podcast. I'm Rick Riddle with my co-host,
Adam Crosley.
All right. And we have a special guest today. For those of you that listen and maybe you may be a member, because there seems to be a lot of them, on the new loan officer group Facebook page. Paul Abraham, who's from My Local Lender, started that Facebook page, not knowing where it was going to go. And next thing you know, with the growth mindset, it has expanded over 45,000 members and really helps everybody every day. And we kind of want to have him on to kind of tell his story. As you guys know, I have now I'm a best-selling author, not to pat myself on the back, but we are now on the we're now on the Amazon best-selling list. But I wanted to obviously, as always on this podcast, I put a shameless plug of the book, Use the Ladder. You can find that at usetheladderbook.com. And so if you're interested in learning more, definitely go on there. But the quote of the day that we'll use from this, which we might have already reused a couple episodes, but I just think it's pertinent, is when you climb the tree of life, use the ladder. And what I meant by that chapter, which is the opening chapter, is it's okay to get it from somebody else, right? It's okay to learn from others, learn from greats. It's all about the execution anyway, right? So I thought it was appropriate with Paul. So Paul, why don't you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit the backstory of that Facebook group, how you got there, and what your vision was originally, and how it's turned out.
Good, man. I appreciate y'all having me today, Rick and Adam. And again, I love what you mentioned there about the book. I'm a wannabe publisher. I'm a wannabe write the book. So I've got about 15 chapters, Rick, and I hope to have that book out, Hunt Like You're Hungry, soon. I'll have to get with you on that.
By the way, great title.
Yeah,
awesome.
I started almost 32 years ago, originating in Georgia. And the guys that got me into the business basically said this: hey, Paul, always think of this as your own company. Always think of it as you're not working for us, you're working for Paul. And I'll just tell everybody that listens to this podcast today, if you genuinely think of what you do as your company and your brand, I'm just telling you that the doors open up to you can be more than just originating, right? As you and I've done, Rick, you can ultimately run your own branch, and then you can run your own company, right? And listen, sometimes even, as I call it, the loan originating field is sometimes a stepping stone to something even bigger, right?
Right.
Could be. And I love your mindset there of what you're talking about, just growth. So long story short is after I was in about 4 years into the business, I started to recognize that I did not like the paperwork. I wasn't a guy that really liked chasing the W-2s and the pay stubs, even though I could do it, right? I did it. But what I did is I hired a girl to help me growth, right? I said, look, I'm making $100K. And by the time I got 4 years in, I made $100K. And that was my stretch goal, is can I make six figures back then? Anyway, I said, look, I'm going to pay you $25,000. I'm only going to make $75,000, and I'm fine with that. But I want you to help me do all the paperwork. And back then you didn't have a license, right? Long story, this girl helped me go to $250 the next year. And then that's when I started to recognize, oh, this is this is much bigger than I thought that it was, right? And I started saying, okay, if I add another $25,000 person, then that person helps me grow some more, right? So that's when I started getting enough leads that I started recruiting LOs, and I genuinely would take one at a time and I would help train them. And this was in the state of Georgia. Never had my scene on the national scene at all. We took a Homestar Financial in the state of Georgia to number one. And I just kept doing one new loan officer at a time. I thought that everybody was training new loan officers like I was. I really did. I had no knowledge that the industry really didn't even like new loan officers. So long story short, what I began to see was when I did get to the national scene, the industry left me a gap, and it basically was a niche. And y'all have heard this, niche to rich, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's niche is everything that I began to see. I was like, okay, the industry doesn't even like new LOs, because when I started the Facebook group, I saw it on a Super Bowl ad, and the Super Bowl ad said, start your own group and you can talk to people that you know, like, and trust, right? And so I started one. I saw the Super Bowl ad, started it, went in that day and just started it, called it New Loan Officer Group. And I invited my team into the group. And I started to tell my team, hey, I'm going to chat through this and I'm going to give y'all ideas through here. And when we do, some of these new LOs that I was inviting in that had passed their exam, I said it'll help them, right? And then what I started to realize, Rick, was that Facebook started to help me. They started putting this algorithm together behind the scenes, and they started to help me grow it. And I started seeing 5, 10, 15 people a day asked to join it, right? And then before I knew it, 1,000 a month. Next time I turn around, there's 10,000. Next time I turn around, there's 20. But I always kept the mindset of, how do I help them grow? How do I help these loan officers, even if they don't work for Paul, how do I help them grow? And what it did is it just started causing them to call me. And they would say, hey, I keep seeing your post. So let me just say to everybody again that's doing what we're doing here today, consistency of posting is more important than the content.
Yep.
I'm not saying that content's not important, but what I'm saying to you is that the consistency of them seeing me is what was more important, right? Because Rick, Adam, they'll call me and here's what they'll say. The first thing that usually comes out of their mouth is, I keep seeing your hashtag Better Call Paul, so I'm calling you, right? I just happen to put one with a call to action on it, right?
Yep.
Better Call Paul. And that's what I stuck with. And then I'm just telling you that almost everybody that calls me. So again, if you're a new LO or if you're wanting to grow, my suggestion is you come up with a hashtag that fits you and what you do. And then think of that as a digital signature. That's what I think of it, is like Paul was here. Everywhere I post, Better Call Paul.
Here's Paul.
You're like the Kim Kardashian of the mortgage business. You're like viral. I mean, you really are. I mean, maybe I don't follow Kim. I actually follow Paul. I don't follow Kim Kardashian. But I mean, you're, first of all, the hashtag is brilliant. I see it everywhere, right? And I see it. Your people, the people that you help use it, which just continues to add to the brand.
Yeah. That's called, now what we used to call references, right? When somebody would refer you, I now call that social proof, right? Mm-hmm. People see it, and then they'll see my name, and then they'll call me because somebody else used my name. And by the way, I'm not paying them to do that. All I do is I help them, right? So when I help them, that comes back to what you and I learned, Rick, reciprocal sales, right? Yeah. If you help somebody, chances are they're going to feel reciprocal in some way to try to help you, right?
Yeah.
So we're just working on human emotion there. It's kind of like if you got a Christmas gift from somebody and you think, dang, I forgot to buy them one. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm trying to do? Figure out a way to get to the store to go buy them one, right?
Yep.
It's the same thing in sales. Y'all know this, reciprocal. I try to always create the reciprocal, right? How do you create that win-win? That if you do that, I'm telling you, the referral part of it is over. You don't have to. It's because they feel reciprocal to try to help you.
And you know what?
So,
Oh no, go Adam.
Well, and having 50,000 people on the page, I mean, that's basically a quarter of the industry.
Yeah. Well, and again, let's go back to what you just said, Adam. There is almost every person that gets into business, in my opinion, what they don't fully understand is the amount of people that they've got to get in front of to create the momentum to stay in the business, right? They never usually understand that. Now, the good part is I came out of the world back in the day when I was late in my teens. I worked for a magazine shop where we're on the telephone in a boiler room. Did y'all ever do that?
Mm-hmm.
My first job was selling yellow pages, the phone book advertising. I'm right there with you.
I was doing magazine calls, and one thing it taught me was, number one is how many people that they made the phone ring, right? Number two is it was okay if somebody said no to you, right? It's okay. Not a big deal. And that's another thing that it taught me early in my teens. And then when I got to the mortgage business, I was like, hey, I got to figure out how to make the phone ring is what I got to do. I got to figure out how to make the phone ring. In my world, I was like, if I'm going to have to rely on a realtor, I may not make it, right? So that's when I started saying, hey, let me figure out ways to get leads on my own. And then once I started getting the lead on my own, now I started to figure out the leverage position. That's what I didn't know, is when I was young in the business, when I got the lead, if any of you all are young in this business and you get the lead, use that to your advantage. That's like putting a tractor in your hand, not a spoon. You can literally use that for leverage to help you grow your business. And so that's what I did.
One of the chapters in my book is whoever has the lead has the power, right? And
that's right.
It's about lead generation, right? Yeah. And you think about it, in the traditional world, the real estate, the customers go to realtors, open houses, or they put their house on the market if they're move-up buyers. Now the realtor has the power, and they're dictating the terms, right? But if you can, what I've also seen is a growing trend in our company. People are getting to the mortgage person before they're getting to the realtor. They're getting pre-approved beforehand, right? Yeah. So in that case, we have the power, right? And if you can create a lead generating source, like you said, I mean, I have loan officers that do it with accountants, financial planners, divorce attorneys. Now they're giving leads out to realtors, and they're building business together. So correct. I agree with you.
Yeah, and that kind of comes back to when you create the lead, you create the leverage. And then also it creates those, basically what I call the conversations that you can help realtors with, right? So again, when I talk to realtors, Rick, Adam, I'm talking about ways to help them grow their business. I'm not coming to them begging them for a lead, right? I don't do that. I come with the idea of I'm going to help you grow your business. That's my goal with realtors, is to help them grow. Same thing it is with loan officers. I tell them all the time, I said, look, everything I'm doing with you right now, when they call me and they'll say, look, notice this, you called me, I didn't cold call you, right? And they'll go, oh yeah. And I'll go, now notice this, you and I are going to get on a conversation today. And I'm going to help you grow your business for free. I'm going to help you because if I help you for free, guess what? You start to know me, like me, and trust me. And when that happens, then does Paul have what you need and want, right? Because if you know me, like me, and trust me, chances are you're coming to work with me, probably, right? Just do I have what you need, right? And almost always they say, man, you just taught me more in an hour than my guy taught me in 2 years. Then I go, you need me.
Well, and if you're just giving out, help and help and help,
that's it.
And you're known as the guy who helps, it makes a lot of sense that these people are better call Paul reaching out to you, because you're the guy that helps, right? That's what Paul does. That's right.
That's what. And see, again, it comes back to the newer LO. I saw that the industry left the gap for those people, right? And I'm honestly, y'all, if y'all would have asked me this 6 years ago, would you expect about almost 50,000 following you in a group? I was like, what?
Absolutely. Exactly. Yeah.
I didn't even know what a Facebook group was, right? I didn't even know what it was 6 years ago. And then once I got it going, I started to recognize the power that Facebook was helping me grow it. And then I wasn't even doing anything. Right now, y'all, I get probably about 500 a month that join it. And I don't have time to invite anybody. They just keep joining it, right?
Yeah.
And it's because Facebook understands who I'm talking to. They understand the client that I'm talking about. I think the algorithms are there. I keep thinking Facebook's going to call me and say, Paul, you're at 50,000. We're going to start charging you for the group now. And you know what Paul's probably going to say? Well, how much do you want?
Well, we shouldn't say that on this podcast because in case Zuckerberg's listening, I don't want him to call Paul and shake him down, down Paul.
He probably has a little bit on me right here. Yeah. He's got, but all I know is this: it's the best marketing tool that I have ever come across in 32 years of marketing, Rick and Adam.
Yeah.
And it costs me no money. Right. Yeah. So all I can tell you is this: if you're new or if you want growth and you're trying to do this at minimal cost, this is the best tool. Social media is the best tool that I have ever come across, and it costs me no money. Best tool.
I will tell you this though, and you do a really good job of engagement, right? Yeah. And I think that what happens is a lot of people, they start a Facebook group and they might have a niche and they might have something, a catchy, better call for Paul type of phrase or niche, yep. But they don't engage. They don't stay active. They don't stay. Yeah. And you started the conversation with consistency, but you are not just posting on, I saw you posted something this morning, right? About turndowns
yep.
But you're actively engaged in every single comment, which is got to be a lot of work because sometimes you'll have hundreds of comments on a post.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that comes back to where what you said, execute, right? If I'm in the sales and marketing world, you have to execute, right? Mm-hmm. If I don't throw the seed, there is no garden, right? Mm-hmm. So throwing the seed is me marketing, but then I got to plant, I got to keep the weeds out, right? And all those things, I got to water it. Well, guess what? That means phone calls. That means you and I talking. See, again, I think a lot of times the younger generation, here's where I got to say to them, you got to be careful that you don't let everything become a link and a this, because links don't have feelings. Links can't talk like you and I are doing right now, right? Now, they're trying to get there, right?
They are.
But I don't think that that's ever going to be able to bring out that human emotion. And again, maybe they can get close, but I still think that there's a little bit in that seed that it is don't have.
Yeah. Well, we hope so, at least for another 10 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But, it's so funny because, you and I started in the 90s and I was a face-to-face 1003,
Same.
I'd rather do it on a bar napkin than even, than
100%
sending a link to a website. Right. And, and it's funny. We talk about it, internally a lot of times with our company, right? It's like, you almost have to, what's the words I'm thinking of? You have to do business the way the customer wants to do business, right?
Yes.
So some want to do it, online or face-to-face or over the phone or, at an app at 2:00 in the morning. That being said, we really want to slow the customer down so we can build a relationship.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
It becomes less price sensitive. And we all sell money for a living. There's nothing sexy about it. The house is sexy. The money's not, but it's that personal relationship, right? That really helps the customer, right? If we can really understand their needs and wants, but it also helps us, right? And I think my worry is new loan officers embrace technology more than us old heads probably embrace technology, but they're losing that customer, that touch. They're losing that personality. And
well, and again, it comes back to, yes, we want to do the way that the customer wants us to do it, right? When they're requesting that. But a lot of times a loan officer is just making the assumption that they want to go that route, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So in other words, I'll give you an example. I talk to many of them on the phone and I'll say something like this. I'll say, hey, you realize that everything I'm doing with you right now, I could have just sent you a podcast of what Rick and Adam and us did, and you'll learn some strategies. But what I would rather do is I'd rather hear you personally tell me what your struggles are, right? So that I really can address those issues, right? I can handle your objections, what you're struggling with, right? I cannot do that with what you and I are doing. Now, they can hear some of it, right? But me engagement with them is really the key to the sales. Know you, like you, and trust you, right? And if I get that, I'm telling you, the sales part is over. You don't have to sell them. Do you have what I need and want, right? Yeah. The sales part is over. Yeah. There is no convincing, right? You're already convinced. Now, do I have what you need and want, right? That's the part that, when it comes to the sales side, right? Yeah. But that's my opinion. And by the way, I think that, you see that little flag right there? Can y'all see that right there?
We do, yeah.
That's what you get to sell. You get to sell a piece of America, right? Is what you get to sell. Mm-hmm. Isn't that the coolest thing in the world, that you and I get to help people build generational wealth? We get to have them great subdivisions where they raise their family, great school districts, safe neighborhoods. You get to buy your beach homes on areas where you can go and have family vacations. That's what we sell, right? And I agree, there is a certain amount of people who think it's just the money, and I understand that. But we get to sell so much more than just the money, right? Yeah. I teach loan officers, this is the reason that you need to post. It's because people get to see that you changed their life. And by the way, this happened for this guy who was raised on a chicken farm in North Georgia, barely passed high school, right? A guy gave me a mortgage at 21, and he said, look, if you'll just make the payments, I did not have the $78,000 that we bought the house with. But he said, if you will just make the payments, I'll let you stay in that house. And I sold that house 10 years later for twice what I paid for it. Wow. Took the second house, Rick, bought it. The guy gave me a mortgage, and he said, if you'll just make the payments, I'll let you stay in that house. And you can sell it for whatever you want to. A second house, sold it twice for what I paid for it in Georgia. Sold it even in the 2008 crash for twice what I paid for it, right? Oh. By the time I got to the third house, and this next statement is not to impress, but to express, I was able to pay cash for a farm in Georgia. And I'm just going to show you a little bit of his. Wow. And it's all because a guy gave me a mortgage when I was 21 years old. And he said, if you'll just work and make the payments, you can do with whatever you want to with that piece of property in America, right? That's what we get to sell. Yeah. Right.
I love that, Paul.
They say that the best time to buy a house was 10 years ago. The second best time, right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to be in the game, right? It's be in the real estate game. Adam has over 50 rental properties, right? And building his wealth, and we actually had an episode talking about that. But you're right. I mean, the only way for we're not blue. None of us are blue blood royalty from the King of England, right? We don't have right. So the only way.
That's a heck no here. That's a heck no here.
But the only way to build wealth and build your retirement and build your future is real estate. Right? Yep. You got to live somewhere, and you probably got to pay for wherever you live. So you're either paying someone else, or you're paying, or you're building your own equity. So.
That's right. Yeah. So that's what I try to tell these new loan officers when they really genuinely believe in what they do. Meaning, in other words, when I hear one say, "Look, I'm afraid to post." And I say, look, don't you realize that there's a young couple on the other side that sees that post and she You literally get to change her life when she reads, oh, I didn't know I could buy a house after I just got married with no down payment, right? She didn't know that. She didn't know that she could get a gift from grandma and grandpa until she talked to me, right? She didn't know she could use her 401k. She didn't know that, right? She didn't know all those things that we know as loan originators that we get to do. And I said, don't you think that she needs to know who you are, right? Because you changed her life. You're not trying to hurt them. You're trying to help them. So in other words, let's phrase it this way. I think they should know you, right? Yeah, that's the first part of the sales process. Know you, like you, and trust you. And the only way I get to know you is, well, what am I seeing you post? What am I seeing you do? What are you doing? Right? If they don't know that, then they can't call you, right? They don't ever get to like you and trust you if they don't know what you do. So the first step we got to is make sure that they know you, right? And the best way to do that is, well, y'all just tell me, where is everybody's attention today? Where is it?
Online,
It's on some type of social. Now, listen, Rick, you and I know this. We went and bought ads at newspaper. We went and bought radio ads, television ads, if you were even making money then. But listen, all those things cost you big money to get your brand out, right? Mm-hmm. And I would even go as far as saying this way: do you really want to spend your money where nobody's even watching it anymore? Everybody's doing this. Y'all tell me, they got their finger on their phone and they're doing like this right here, right? Mm-hmm. That's the classic that I see everywhere I go, no matter where I go. I went to church the other night at a church meeting, and half of the guys on their phone while the church meeting was just about to start. Half of them. I went to a restaurant yesterday after church, and when I got back, I looked around. Half the people are on their phone. If y'all go in traffic, I know you do, look around and you'll see half the people on their phone in traffic.
Yep.
So, but again, listen, I'm preaching to the choir. You guys are doing a podcast so you can get somebody to listen to you, right? You're putting the message out there.
Absolutely.
Well, you know what? I think that what do they say? Your net worth is your network, or your network is your network.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I agree.
I don't know which one goes first, but both
of them are good.
Yes, both of them
are great. I want to keep building them both.
And that's why I thought was so impressive is that you have a huge network that you built for free, right? I mean, you just built it. And I mean,
I literally did. Yeah.
And it wasn't
by giving
easy.
value. I mean, that's awesome.
By giving value. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And again, as you just described, Adam, it's executing on what I had here in my head, right? Yeah. Because see, I love, as y'all can tell, I love sales and marketing. Mm-hmm. I hated doing loans. Meaning the transactional part, I just despise that part of it, right? Sure. But what I learned was that the sales and the marketing is what kept my guys in the business, right? And that's what I would share with everybody. You got to learn the sales and the marketing part. I don't care how much you know about an FHA loan. If you can't get a lead, you're out of business, right? Mm-hmm. You got to get the customer. You got to get to the customer. Now, hey, are you going to make mistakes? Heck yeah, so did I. The first one I did was a down payment assistance in Atlanta, $65,000. I think it took me almost 6 months to close that deal. and I think I got cussed out by the lawyer, the realtors, and the consumer. But man, I'm closing that deal, right? Boy, I learned through it, But long story short is, the more I realized that I like the sales and the marketing side, and then ultimately training new loan officers is really where I found my sweet spot,
And so you're my local lender, right? And you're doing a sales coaching. I was like, well, what is your program?
Yeah. So, again, as you and I've discovered that I do some recruitment for a company on a PMR out of Boise, Idaho, great company. And then also because of the capacity that I'll bring to the table, sometimes I get an overflow, Rick, as you've seen. Yeah. This overflow, people will start calling me on there. And then I'll say, hey, I know a guy up in the north, he's got a company called Crown and he'll help you, right? He's a senior. He'll help you. So I recruit from that angle. And then I do have a coaching platform. We call it Home Court. And it's basically what I've done is figured out a way that I can keep a brand of a new loan officer in front of a realtor as much as we can. I try to give tools so that we help the realtor grow, but it keeps that brand of that LO in front of them.
Very cool.
So that's a coaching program that we do.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome.
But everything is about training on sales and marketing. Almost everything I do has to do with that.
And that's it, right? There's I give an analogy in a training about American Idol. And I always say, we all, I don't think the three of us, other than are professional singers. I mean, I have heard Adam sing; he's pretty good at it. But we watched American Idol, and you heard a singer, and you're like, that singer sounded pretty good. And you got to Randy, and Randy's like, great pitch dog. Then you got to Paula, and Paula's like, oh, I love your voice. And then you get to Simon, and Simon would be, you know what? They are 100% right, but you're never going to make it. Yeah. Because there's nothing memorable about you. There's nothing special. And I thought about sales, right? You could learn the FHA, conventional, how to read credit reports, how to read appraisals, and this and that. But if they don't know you exist, if there's nothing memorable about you, you're not going to make it. And that's why I've always done sales. It's about being memorable, being out there, letting people know you exist.
And again, you're hitting on a main point that the very first thing I talk to loan officers about is I say, what makes you different? What makes you different? And as I was telling y'all, usually on these calls like this, Rick and Adam, I'll show up literally in a camouflage, black paint, gun in the background, camouflage suit here. And I'll say, look, we're fixing to teach you how to hunt like you're hungry, right?
I love it.
And then usually that podcast guy will go, is this the same Paul that I see posting on, And I go, yeah. So the first thing I want you to see is I want you to see how different I am, right? Showing up. Today, again, I got on my ball cap, local lender. So I'm going to be the local lender guy today. But most of the time I try to say, what sets you apart? What makes you different? And if we can't say that, then you need to figure out let's come up with whatever that way is. And again, I try to get them out of that box because you got to get out of that box of what makes you different. And again, a lot of times it's all kind of different ways that they can do it. Sometimes I'll even tell a realtor, why don't you run the ad sideways? Somebody call you and say, hey, did you know your post is running sideways? I say, yeah, for the right price. Have you thought about selling your home this year? Right. I just trying to make a point, right?
Exactly.
I need to set you apart. If you say the same thing as all the other guys, then guess what? You're saying the same thing. You don't set yourself apart. So how do we make ourselves different? How not the same? That becomes the core piece of everything that I teach is making yourself different. I showed up one time at a real estate office with a bunny Easter suit on. We're coming up on Easter, and I showed up with a bunny Easter suit on. And I had this basket, and I said, did your loan officer lay an egg on the last deal you just did?
Wow, I love it.
Yeah, and actually, I think I said rotten egg, meaning that he didn't do a very good job, right? Man, you would not believe the conversations that started, right?
I love that.
We used to recruit. I do a lot of recruiting for our company, and we used to send a roll of toilet paper to loan officers. And it would have like low appraisal, COVID guidelines, inspection issues, and it would say, use this to wipe your problems away. So it's all about being memorable, right? That's the secret, is letting them be a little bit out there. So let your personality shine. I wish you came on with the all in camouflage.
That would have been great.
You know what? I would have you if you'd have texted me earlier, I would have done it. I promise you. But I missed the call, and you had to call and remind me, Paul, you're coming on the call.
Well, you know what? When you have your book come out, we will have you on again, but that time in camouflage. So
I'd love to.
Well, I'll go in camouflage. I'll be hiding in the weeds. Yeah. So
awesome. Well, Paul, this is fantastic. I mean, for me, I think my biggest takeaways are just give. like give and be helpful and also be different, because I think that that's what it is if you give, you're going to the law of reciprocity. It's going to come back to you, and
100%.
and you're doing it from the right place ultimately. And, Rick and I have known each other for a while. I always try and be different and different things I do. And I think that also too, it makes you memorable and it gets people to come back. So this is fantastic. And it's been amazing to peer into your brain a little bit here today, Paul.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and I'll share this last story. And you just said authentic, right? Mm-hmm. So you come from that place of the inner core of somebody really believing that what they do is purposeful and what they do means something. And so as I've just mentioned here, you said give, and I hope that that's the spot. It reminds me of one of Jesus's verse where he said, give and it shall be given, right? I think a lot of these old time guys that did what I call, the Zig Ziglars, the Jim Rohns, they took basically, I'll go back and I'll look at a scripture and it will match almost word for word principle of what they're saying. They just said it in a secular manner, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But if you go back to some of those, I'm just telling you, it's there, even all the way back as far as whenever that was written 2,000 years ago, So I'll just leave that with you.
That's
be
great.
Authentic to who you are, right? Some people like it, some people don't. But listen, I can't change of what I believe, right? And man, when you do believe it, though, it's hard to stop a man on a mission, right?
Yeah.
Hard to stop a woman on a mission. I've enjoyed it, y'all.
Yes, Paul, thank you so much. And if you haven't yet, if you're on this podcast, join New Loan Officer, the New Loan Officer Facebook group. Use the hashtag Better Call Paul. Tell them that the Growth Mindset podcast sent you. That would be great. But yes, thank you so much, Paul, for being on. If there's anything that we can do to help you, please, as a friend of the show, we appreciate you as well.
All right, fellas. Good to see y'all.
Awesome. Eric, take it away.
You've been listening to The Growth Mindset, hosted by Adam Crosley and Rick Riddle. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with your colleagues. Stay tuned for more actionable insights to fuel your career success. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are personal and do not necessarily reflect the official policies, positions, or opinions of Absolute Home Mortgage Corporation or Crown Home Mortgage. The content is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered professional advice or an official endorsement by either organization.